Hello, 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 and welcome back to another monthly life with me, Maureen Chiana. I am so pleased that I'm back again doing this. And let me just see. So, as you come in or as you join, if you can just put where you're joining from, that would be amazing. Wait, give me 1 second. Let's get this correct. So, that's the one. So tell us where you're joining from. That would be amazing. That would be so cool. So, yes, we're live. If you see me looking down, it's because I'm trying to see what's going on LinkedIn. It's a weird one because I can't really see comments from LinkedIn on my screen. Um, but yeah, we are live. We are live with another session. And today's topic, I'm so excited about actually. So, the power of the spoken word, crafting your reality. And let's see, can see comments coming in. Hey, Margaret, all the way from Jos, Nigeria. It's so great to have you here, Margaret. Thank you for joining. So, yeah, our topic today is the power of the spoken word. And if you're just meeting me for the first time, my name is Maureen Chiana, and I run the CEO and founder of the Mindsight Academy, where we use neuroscience, emotional intelligence to empower leaders, empower individuals, entrepreneurs to be their best by understanding how the brain works, the impact it has on behavior, the impact it has on decision making, the impact it has on every aspect of our life. So yeah, you can jump. You can not now though. Don't go over to the academy yet. After the session, go check us out. I also in the academy. One of the two big things we do, we've got courses and our signature courses, emotional intelligence for leadership, but we also have a network for Christian women, and it's known as Mindsight Women's Network. And in this, slightly different, we now add the aspect of faith to emotional intelligence and neuroscience, which is so powerful. So, yeah, it's great to have you here. I am still looking to see what's going on LinkedIn, but I can't really see it here. So, if you're LinkedIn, if you can see and you can hear me, great. If not, you can jump over to YouTube. So, hi, Emeka. How are you? Great, all the way from Leicester. So, yes, let's dive into the topic today. And I'm going to start with a story. You know, I love stories. So, this is the story of the two frogs. And some of you might have heard this story already. And it's where two frogs accidentally fell into a deep pit while hopping through the forest. Now, as they struggle to escape or struggle to come out of this pit, their friends started shouting, or really discouraging them in a way because they saw how difficult it was as the frogs were trying to get out. The friends were shouting, see, it's not going to be possible. You're so far deep in. There's no way you can get out. And they were just shouting all these words of discouragement at these two frogs. The frogs kept trying and trying and trying. At a point, one of them just gave up. But the other one kept on trying, hopping higher and higher and higher. And eventually, it came out of the pit. And they were all surprised and said, how did you make it? And actually, what made you to keep going on? And you know what the frog said? The frog said that he's partially deaf. So while they were shouting, the frog thought that they were actually encouraging them to keep going, to keep trying. And that's why he kept going. So it just shows you the power of words. Today, I want us to look at the power of words from different aspects. The aspect which I've just explained, which is where it's coming external, from an external source, but also the aspect of it being internal. So, as we go along, think about it and think of situations in your own life where you've had both. So, Grace from Lagos, so good to have you. Juliet, oh my dear Juliet, so good to have you. Kaka's Cooking Tips, great to see you. That's my sister. Great to have you here. So, yeah, please keep dropping in the chat where you're joining us from. And as we go along, if there's any comment that you want to put in the chat, feel free. Let us kind of make it as interactive as we can. And if you've got questions as well, pop them into the chat as well. Blessing, great to have you here. Dolakbo, so good to have you all the way from Wolverhampton. And Louise Edwards, so good. So lovely, lovely, lovely. I'm so pleased you guys are here. So let's really make this interactive. Those that know me will tell you that the more questions you ask, the deeper we can go and the more relevant you can make it for yourself. So please ask me questions. Task my brain today. You have full permission to do that. My able administrator, welcome, Able, all the way from Netherlands. Welcome, welcome. Now, what for you, Sha? I'll say no more. Netherlands, eh? So good to have you here. Right. Okay. So that story of the frog, I don't know what it resonates with you. Where these two, same situation, but responded differently. But one of them actually responded differently because of the perception that it had, the perception that it was that they were encouraging him, or they were just encouraging it. But the other one literally gave up. So it's interesting how words really have an impact on us. And let us start this. I want us to kind of start with some scriptures which explains quite a bit about this for us. So, Proverbs 18:21, and the Amplified Version says, "Death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those who love it and indulge it will eat its fruit and bear the consequences of the words." Death and life are in the power of the tongue. We've all probably heard this or seen it or even understand it quite to an extent. But it's so powerful when it kind of says death. Sometimes we feel that maybe it's spiritual death, but actually it's death. It can actually kill you physically. The negative words can actually kill physically, but they can also, positive words, affirming words, can really empower you and give you life. And as we go through the talk today, you will see what I mean, and I'll go into the science and explain the aspect of death, because negative words, limiting words can actually kill cells in the brain, leading to physical disease, where your body is actually not at ease. So it's actually disease and can lead to illnesses, sicknesses, emotional, mental, physical, that can really have an impact on you and actually kill as well. So it's important to be very alert to words that you say to ourselves, but also that you take in. And I'll go through quite a bit as we go along. So I've got a question, and I'm going to keep going back and forth here because the questions really help me. Blessing, I'm so pleased you're here because you really are one person that knows how to task my brain. So let's do this. What's more powerful, or what's more powerful, impactful? Words spoken to us, over us, or words we speak over ourselves? I like that actually. So, which one is more impactful, more powerful? That actually depends on you, to be fair, because you see, it really comes back to how you're currently wired. So what information do you already have stored in your brain? What information is stored in memory? Because anything happening really it's determined by what's already in the container, which is the brain. So one of the things I talk about a lot is that how when we are born with literally, it's almost like a blank slate. And as time goes on, from what our parents say, from experiences and all that, we become wired. So it's this wiring that will determine. So for example, if you're brought up in a situation, or you've trained your brain to this in a situation whereby what people say to you you kind of sieve it, you sieve things out, you don't take it on board, you're not reliant on people's affirmations, you're not reliant on what people say to you, you're not dependent on people praising you or not praising you. You've kind of developed the kind of confidence and self-esteem with yourself. In a situation like that, what people say over you or to you might not impact you as much. It might impact you initially in the sense that if it's something negative, it might kind of jerk you or alert you. But because you've developed the skills to process things, reflect, sieve things out, you now have the ability to go, no, I'm not taking this, or I will take this. But if you've not developed that skill, or if you're brought up in a situation where you are constantly being told what you couldn't do by parents, teachers, or environment, family, and all that, then both could you'll be impacted by both to an extent. But what we tell ourselves, to be honest, has it has the greater impact because it's what we're telling ourselves. You see, so in some cases it can be both, but in most cases it's the one we tell ourselves if the other one doesn't apply to you. So I hope that answers your question, because when you tell yourself that, it becomes a belief, and I'll explain this a bit more when I get into the science of the brain. So great question. Thanks, Blessing, for that. Ebu has started, administrator. Thank you. Love you, Lo, sis. Thank you, Nkechi. Great to see you here. So that was a good question. Keep the questions coming. The other scripture that I want us to look at, or kind of, I might not go into it a lot, but just to reflect on, is Genesis 1:3. And it says, and God said, let there be light, and there was light. Let there be. So he spoke the universe into existence. And that's the power of the spoken word. Our spoken words are very creative. So when we speak, and it's interesting because our brains are very creative as well. You can see me here, I'm doing scripture, but keep bringing in the science. The science is just so fascinating, but I'll go into a bit more science later. But that whole aspect of God spoke, and that's the power of creation. And he says that we are made in his image, so that when we speak, things happen. There's creation going on, there's creativity going on. That creativity could be within us, or it could even be in someone else. And that's looking at that question Blessing asked. When we say things, the person or people that are even hearing it could start creating something in their own brain. And I've explained, I've given the story about this once when I was about to open the academy, and someone said to me, okay, before that, I was going to open the academy, but I was having doubts myself in terms of, will it work? Is it the right thing to do? And then I told someone about it, and the person said, but who wants to go online to learn? That people prefer face to face. And because what she said landed on a wiring that was already in my brain, it took off. That, the brain literally took that in. So it started creating a narrative in my brain. And each time I went to sit down to work on that academy, I couldn't. In fact, I couldn't even sit down. Each time I thought of doing it, I'll come up with a reason not to do it. Self-sabotage, procrastination, kept putting it off. So it shows the power of our words in terms of how creative they can be. The other thing I want to look at is Numbers 13 to 14, which I won't read, but it's the story of when Moses sent out spies to go and look at the land. And then Moses returned with discouraging words, kind of describing the inhabitants of the land as giants, and say that they were like grasshoppers before these giants. And it really comes back to that whole quote, and I don't know who says it, but it says, you see the world not as it is, but as you are. So they had seen themselves as grasshoppers before these people. They created a story about how great these people are, how big they are, how equipped they are, how it will be impossible to get there. Now, with that, that whole issue then led to them, brought about the whole aspect of staying in the wilderness for 40 years. But Joshua and Caleb, same situation. They all went. 12 of them, 10 just saw giants, saw themselves as grasshoppers. Two saw themselves as they're able to go and overtake it. Same situation. And that is what we experience every single day. You're in the same situation as people, but people take it differently. And it's so important to start reflecting on yourself in terms of how are you taking situations when people say things to you. What's going on in your brain? How do you respond? How do you react? Because they're two different things. What's going on, so that you can start being in control of your own actions, your own narratives, your own story, the words that you're hearing and the words that you're speaking as well. So let's see. I'm looking at the comments again. God's spoken word triggered creation. Yes. Are spoken words the same, or are they aligned with manifestations? Are spoken words the same, or are they aligned with manifestations? If I understand what you're asking, Juliet, spoken words lead to manifestation. So, and that's the creativity. So when you speak the words, they then lead to some form of creation, and that's manifestation. So for example, you have a goal that you want to achieve, and if without going too much into the whole aspect of aligning your goals with your vision and all that. In fact, we just finished a 90-day experience in the Mindsight Women's Network, and I'm going to put all the links to these places in the description. But what we were looking at was goal setting and the importance of aligning God's vision to our goals, making sure they align, because when they are not, when there's that misalignment, no matter how much you go about those goals, you find that you don't achieve them. And that's why when a lot of people set goals and don't achieve those goals, because it's goals that look good to them, or goals that they've seen other people do and are doing well. But is it your goal? Is that the goal God has for you? Now, in terms of this manifestation, when you get that goal in your mind, you actually start visualizing what you want to achieve, and that's the power that God has given us, that power of creation, that power of manifestation. And that is what will enable you take action that will then bring about the manifestation of that thing that you want to achieve. So basically, starting from the words or the thoughts, because those two can be interchangeable, and that's why I'm going to keep talking about both. That creates the emotion in the brain, and I talk a lot about the emotional part of the brain, the amygdala. And then that is what then leads to, creates the emotions, creates the neurotransmitters that make you or enable you take action. And it's the continued action that you take that leads to the manifestation, or the achievement of results that you want to achieve. Juliet, if that did not answer your question, put the question back again. Let me see what you mean, but I hope it did. So Nkechi says there's power in the tongue. Oh, yes. As God's children, our words have creative power. Exactly. So that is why it's so important to don't be quick to speak, basically. Don't be quick to say things. Take your time. Stop. Silence is actually powerful. So because when you speak, it creates things. And like I've just explained, it will create things in you, but it could also create things in the person that is hearing it, the person you're speaking to. And that's why so many leaders are crushing their employees in the workplace from what they say. So many, and so many people's life have been turned around from poor leaders, just from what people say. Even the same thing, we can say the same in relationships. We can even say the same as parents to children. A lot of adults are damaged today because of what parents have spoken over them. And that's why it's so important to be very alert to what you say. And it's also so important to be very alert to what you hear, because what you hear really has power to influence your actions without you even knowing it. It's a very subconscious thing, because you're taking in so much information at the same time, and the brain is filtering out so much. But what it does is holds on to whatever information that is coming in, that has something in memory, or something that you know that it can relate to, and then it holds on to that, and you find yourself acting in that way, and then wondering, why did I do that? Why did I take that action? Or why did I respond that way or react that way to that person? That's why. So let's see. Blessing says, what about passive negative words, suggestions from others? What impact does that have? Blessing, I'm actually going to talk about suggestions in a second. Greg, I love that question. If I don't answer your question though, ask me again, please. Just repost it back again at the end. Um, so which is why we should choose who we partner with on our dreams. Grace, my darling Grace, great to see you here. Yes, so yes. We need to really be careful who we partner with our dreams. You need to be very careful who you share your dreams with. Very, very careful. No matter how close the person is to you, just be very alert to how the person is wired. So it could be someone very close. Doesn't mean you don't have to be friends or anything, but just be very alert to how the person is wired, and that will determine what you share, how you share. Because you could ask a simple question, and somebody's suggestion to you could completely throw you off track. Words have so much power. So, what happens when you're speaking, but you don't really believe yourself in what you're speaking? Ooh, I like this. Why does that happen? Let me see if I can actually see. Let's see if I can see. Still can't see anything on LinkedIn yet. Please, if you are on LinkedIn, jump over to. Oh yeah, I can see LinkedIn now. Awesome. Yes, I can see. Right, lovely. So if coming back to that question, what happens when you're speaking but don't really believe? The reason that you would not believe what you're saying is there's a misalignment. So, and that misalignment could be a value that is different from what you're saying, a belief, a belief that is different from what you're saying. So it could, depends on what it is that you're saying that you don't believe. Now, having said that, though, when you want to establish something new, something different that hasn't been wired in your brain before, you will be speaking something that you probably don't agree with, because you have a different belief system from that. The best way to actually align both, it comes back to the question of, why are you saying what you're saying, or wanting to believe what you want to believe, or why, what's the why behind what you're saying? Basically, what's the purpose of it? What's the why behind it? And this is where it becomes important to establish that. And the reason for that is that establishing that, or getting that why, connects to your emotional brain. The emotional brain is so powerful, and this is why I get, I'm so passionate about emotional intelligence, because when you understand the emotional brain and how to manage it, it literally would enable you live the life that you truly want. That emotional brain is so powerful. So the why connects, creates the emotion that will attach to the why, that will enable you carry out the action. So it's when you say that, when you start speaking that thing repeatedly and creating the emotion around it with that why, that will then create the alignment. It's almost like it will then create a new wiring that will probably get rid of the negative one or previous one that you want to get rid of. Or if it's a belief, a deep belief of value you have, and what you're saying is completely contradictory, asking the same question why will go back to help you align with the value or belief that you have. So the reason for the misalignment, or you saying it and not believing it, is because it lacks alignment basically in your brain. So some of those reasons will help you align it. But why? That question, asking yourself and being able to really answer that question, solves a lot of problems for you, because it literally gives your brain the answer, or gives your brain the narrative to work with. Do you see? So I'm going to continue a bit and then come back to the comments in the, but please keep them coming, keep the questions coming. So I've kind of looked a bit around the scripture. So use that to kind of reflect on what you're on, on how scripture really shows us the power of words. Then now I want to dive into a bit of the science. And we're going to start with looking at things like the neuroscience, neuroplasticity. And neuroplasticity literally tells us that our brain our brain has the ability to reorganize itself, but also form new neural pathways. So that is new connections within the brain. Now we know this is possible, because in the past we thought it wasn't possible, but now science is showing us it's possible. And I think I've told this story, how when I started really getting into neuroscience and discovering all this, it really then made sense. And it enabled me understand why the Bible says things like death and life are in the power of the tongue. Because science is showing us that we can change our narrative, we can reorganize our brain. That means that we changing what we say, we can change the wiring that we've acquired from when we were young, which is really powerful. So repeated exposure to negative narratives or words can increase stress and affect long-term mental health or mental fitness. And how does that happen? Because when we speak words, these words create, like I've explained, these words create emotions that then create the actions or make us carry out actions. And the more you repeat those actions, they will become your pattern, or create a particular type of result for you. And it is a study by Dr. Andrew Newberg that found that negative words can actually activate the brain's fear response and increase production of stress hormones like cortisol. So they actually specifically work on specific parts of the brain. Now, there's something interesting about the emotional brain as well. The emotional brain gets activated more, quicker and stronger to negatives. So negative words, negative narratives. And the reason for that is that it does that to protect us, because the whole purpose of the brain, one of them, is to protect us and keep us safe. So if there's a threat, then the brain has to act quickly. And that's why somebody could be very nice to you for 20 years, but the moment they do one bad thing or negative thing, or say one negative thing to you, you never forget it. You forget the whole 20 years they've been nice, and you're focusing, ruminating, thinking about that negative thing they said to you or did to you. That's why. So a single word has the power to influence the expression of genes that regulate physical and emotional stress. So that when you speak those words, what they actually do is make gene expression now activate that gene expression that regulates stress response for you. And that's why it's so quick for that to happen, that pathway. So if I come now and start shouting, no, 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 and you see this happens a lot, parents to children, when a child does something, no, this one, no, no, no. What you don't realize is that no immediately is creating a negative emotion within you. Do you see? And even if I shout yes, 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 it creates an emotion, but not as strong as the no. And that's the power of words, but difference between positive and negative words as well. So internal dialogue shapes our self-perception. And this is where I'm going to come to your question, Blessing. So internal dialogues shape self-perception. And the way it does that is that when you have words, when you speak words or hear words, or they're coming into you and you're creating a narrative emotion around them, they then activate parts of your brain that then enable you take action. But the interesting thing is that they activate some parts of the brain that can create fear, that can create peace, that can create love. But importantly, they also can affect, for example, affect places like the thalamus and other parts of the brain that create the reality of what you want, of your own reality, but also how you perceive yourself. So, for example, if words are coming in, one of the key places that are impacted are the frontal part of the brain, because when the emotional part of the brain is activated, it deactivates, our frontal part, which is our reasoning, where we make decisions and all that. And it impacts that. And a lot of times, what it will do is create a self-perception of yourself. Create a perception of yourself, how you see yourself, how you value yourself, how worthy you think of yourself. So that is why, whether you're picking up a lot of negatives or picking up a lot of positives, that would impact on your self-perception, which will then impact on your confidence. And also, the other impact it will have, it because it's affecting the emotional part of the brain, it will also impact that your actions, which could then make you to start being irritable, start making you to be frustrated, and that comes out in language, in what you say. And this talk is not so much on communication, but when you really take it further into communication, you tend to find a lot of times people focus a lot on what people say, but you forget that there's even more you can pick up when people are talking. The eye contact, even the body language says a lot, because what's going on in the brain, that narrative, is connected to the body, and it's making your body do different things. And that's why you can pick up a lot from body language as well. So one of the good ways to craft a new reality with self-suggestion. Self-suggestion is really where it will help you align your thoughts, align your emotions, and then align your actions as well. And what is self-suggestion? It's repeating those positive words you want to have. And one of the things I told you was, if I start saying no, 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 one of the things that would do is increase the amygdala, which is that main part of the emotional brain. It will actually activate it quite significantly. But also, because it gets activated, it will then deactivate the brain areas that are connected to logic, to reasoning. And that's why when you are in that negative state of mind, you find that you can't make effective decisions. Sometimes you can't even make decisions at all. You find that you can't, you can't even make any logical decision. You can't even reason properly, because your emotional part of the brain is activated. So it's so important to start paying attention to what you're saying, what you're taking in, and so that you can start reframing these things, or changing these structures that have developed in your brain. So coming back to the self suggestion, one of the things you can start doing, and this is being intentional about what you say. So for example, I am capable of managing my time effectively. I am creating value for my clients. I am helping my team members be their best. All this would increase your productivity, your motivation, but also give you clarity of purpose. I have I have the creativity to solve complex problems. And all this really comes back, self-suggestion comes back to that scripture. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. So even if you don't, initially as you're starting and you don't, you feel that you can't, go back to the scripture, go back to that anchor that shows you that you can, that tells you that you can. And that is what will help you create that alignment. So I'm coming back to comments now. Let's see. Let me take this banner off. So let's see questions. Okay, she says, years ago, I walked past Canary Wharf with a friend. I looked at Barclays Bank Canary Wharf and told her that I would love to work there. Years later, I got a role there. Wow. That is, yeah. Something similar has happened to me, actually. That is so powerful. That just says a lot. The power of the spoken word. That's a good one. Thank you. So, what steps do you take to ensure your goals? Let's see, let me put this up here. So, what steps do you take to ensure your goals are aligned to God's will? How are you certain your goals are aligned? Great. This is a great question, Grace. And my first answer to you, Grace, will be join our Mindset Women's Network. The answer is there. That's the long and short answer for that. So, yes, to be able to do that, you really have to, there are steps. There are lots of questions you've got to ask yourself. First and foremost, what are the goals? In fact, before you get to goals, and I'll just go through it quickly, there are 4 steps. The first step is self-discovery, coming back to that whole aspect of identity. Who am I? Who does God say I am? What does God say I can do? A lot of other things, identifying your own personal strength, your own just who are you? How are you wired? What needs to change? What aspects of your behavior, actions, or thought process needs to change? That's step 1. Step 2 is then reframe. Then it's time to change the aspects of your brain that need changing. Now, all over our brain, basically, we have receptors, but different parts of the brain have more receptors than others. Over time, we wire different areas of our brain more than others, and that then creates a behavior pattern or habits and behavior pattern. And that's where people can say that's your personality. I don't use personality because it's like a fixed thing. What we do have is behavior patterns, which we can change. But a lot of times we don't know what they are because they're very subconscious. So when you do this first step, then you identify what needs to be changed. And that's the reframing. And then it's in the third step that you now come to set goals. And there are quite a few questions that we go through. So when you then look at from the first part that you've done, that self-discovery, linking it to that passion, that thing that you've discovered that God is calling you to, that is where you then set the goals. And we use what's known as the smartest goal setting technique, which connects to the brain. A lot of us have heard of SMART, but this is different. Then from that step, the next one is the reform, which I call now how do I ensure that I actually achieve this goal? And that is, how do I build resilience, stay motivated, prevent procrastination and all that. So in short, Grace, that's the best way to do it. But there are lots of questions to answer. I do have this framework in our academy, which is known as the Soar Higher e-toolkit. It's in there and it has the questions you can answer to help you ensure that your goals are aligned with what God is calling you to do. But that's a great question. Thank you for asking that. So, oh, my dear Queen, let's see. So, do negative words have more effect than positive words? Yes, they do. Based on the no scenario justice, yes, they do. I think I answered that question as well. Yes, they do, because our brain wants to protect us from what it perceives as a threat, and negative words are perceived as a threat by our brain, because a negative word, you automatically, your emotional part of the brain is activated, and because it, as far as it's concerned, there's a threat at hand, and it activates the fight, flight, or freeze mechanism to make you fight, flee, or freeze. So yes. uh let's see. Blessing says, what is the impact of speaking from our emotions? Chai, you lady, you do go deep, eh? I think you're out for me today. What is the impact of speaking from our emotions? I hope I understand what you mean. But one of the things about emotions is, when you say you're speaking from your emotion, a lot of times we do, because emotions really drives a lot of what we do. Because, like I said, thoughts, words create emotions that then make you take an action. And lots of, so if we come back to, you've got emotion, and then you're speaking from the emotion, it depends on the type of emotion, obviously. So if it's a negative emotion, what you will find yourself doing is speaking negatively. And this is where you might find people now coming up with those things like, I can't do this, it's too difficult for me, it's too challenging, if I apply I won't get it, all those narratives. That, most of the time, that is speaking from a negative emotion, because the emotion is there, and maybe as well you've had a previous experience that created an emotion. I told the story of when I closed my business about almost 20 years ago now, actually. There was a strong negative emotion attached to that. And I found myself really speaking a lot of that negative emotion till I discovered, what I'm teaching you today, the whole neuroscience of the brain. So I changed the narrative. And honestly, because I wasn't feeling what I was actually saying at the time, one thing that I knew and I was sure of is that God is faithful. So every time you speak to me, then what I would say is, God is faithful. God is faithful. God is faithful. And that's how I started. And with time, I was able to change my narrative, and come out of it. So yes, we do. The impact is that if it's a negative emotion and you're speaking negatively, it will create negative results, basically. But if it's positive, so if you're speaking positive, if it's from a positive emotion, it will create positive results as well, you see. But the key is repetition. Now, I'll tell you something, it's actually more difficult creating the positive narrative than it is creating the negative narrative, for the same reasons that the brain goes into threat mode really quickly. So that is why it's important to be persistent when what you want to create is positive. You've got to be persistent in those positive things that you're saying, in that self-suggestion, in what you're believing, or what you want to happen, the results that you want to achieve. You've got to be really consistent. Repetition is what rewires the brain. So continue saying it till you really start feeling it. And but you've got to believe it first, and then you start seeing the results as you come through, or start feeling it as well. But initially you might still be in that negative emotion, but stand on what you believe, and start speaking what you want to achieve, and then that will bring about the positive emotions that will enable you carry out the positive actions. So I hope that helped. The other aspect of creating your new reality is reframing, which I've spoken about a bit, which I call it practice reframing. I think I've written something here. Yes, so practice reframing negative statements into constructive language. So this will help you view challenges as opportunities, but also look at failure as a learning experience. A lot of times I find that people are so scared to fail that it then paralyzes them from doing everything. Fear is another great emotion that limits people so much, and it comes a lot from spoken word. As you speak it, then you're believing it, and it's creating that narrative, that story within your brain that then makes you carry out the actions that align with it, basically. So instead of saying things like i'm always I'm always, or I always mess things up, which is why I heard someone say recently, I always mess things up. If you have not listened to the live we did last month, go listen to it about the thinking traps, because I did talk about should always narratives. Go listen to that video. But if you find yourself going, I always mess things up, just stop yourself. Once the always should comes in, stop yourself, because that's picking up negative, and that's a negative narrative that will create a negative emotion. And the problem is that it then starts spiraling. The brain just keeps repeating it, and it repeats it because it needs to protect you from it. So the more it makes you repeat that narrative, it's protecting you but creating more negative emotion, and you end up in that catch 22, in that circle. So shift, that narrative to a more positive one, that I can, or I will find a way to do it, or I will find a way to do it better next time. That is a better narrative than I always mess things up. And this will shift that self-criticism away and then create that growth mindset for you. So once you find yourself saying things like I can't, change it into I will find a way. Focus on problem solving, focus on creativity rather than resignation, or just the fact that I can't do it. I can't do it. Just focus on what you can. The other thing is align your speech with your faith, your values, and your desired future. And I think I've mentioned this already. I touched on this when I think it was from Grace's question, actually. So align your speech with your faith. What is your faith? What do you believe in? What has God said about you? What has God said in his word? What is that logos? And it's turning that logos into a rhema, finding out what that rhema word for you is. And Grace, this also comes into a bit of your question as well. So speaking in a way that aligns with your values will cultivate integrity, but also authenticity for you. So I hope this helped. There's something a lady said, I think her name is Barbara Fredrickson, I think, and she says that we develop 3 to 5 positive thoughts in response to every negative reaction, or rather that we should develop 3 to 5 positive thoughts in response to every negative reaction we have. And the reason she says that is for what I've just described, how powerful our negative narratives and emotions are. So to be able to counteract them, every negative one that you want to reframe, build up, create 3 to 5 positive thoughts that you keep repeating, that would to enable you counteract that negative response. So let's see what else is in the comment. And we're almost at the end now, actually. So put in your questions because I'm almost rounding up now. Let's see. I like the adverse. Go back to scripture. Yeah, definitely. So there's a question here from Blessing. Do we first think differently to speak differently, or do we first speak differently to think differently? I like that question, actually. And Blessed, it depends. Most times, it really depends on the situation, to be fair, because sometimes, most times, I would say it comes from the thoughts. Yeah. But to be honest, there are times that people don't even it's not even a thought. Do you see? It's not even processed as a thought for them. It can actually be a narrative that they've taken in, and that's why I say a lot of times we take in things passively. We take in things that we hear, that we're exposed to, things that we've been told when we were young. Things that in fact, I met a grown man running a business that kept saying that he's terrible at maths. And when I probed him further, it was what his teacher told him when he was young. So it wasn't even that, he hadn't even tried. And to be honest, when I spoke to him a lot more, he found out that he's actually been doing things and he was good with numbers. But because he was told he wasn't, it's a narrative he hadn't even processed but believed. So he was speaking it without thinking. Did you see? So a lot of times it does come from the thoughts, but sometimes it's a memory that is stored in subconscious that we pick out and speak without processing it consciously. So I hope that answers your question. So the best thing to do is to pay attention to what you say, but also what you think, because then you cover both ends. Pay attention to what you say, but pay attention to what you're thinking as well. Because a lot of times, people actually, you say what you don't even believe because you've not processed it. Just it's in the subconscious. So pay attention to both. Yeah. And then Margaret says, thank you so much for the privilege. Oh, you're very welcome. Vijay, and this is so useful. Let me see. Let me put it. Can you share tips for practicing the reframing? Do I write it down and recite? Okay. Now, there are different ways. I've got a framework for reframing thoughts that I use, and I'll just share that with you. But to be honest, it's reframing is so broad. I can give you a generic framework, but it's more useful and powerful when you know what you're reframing and then use a specific reframing method to do it. And this is where coaching really comes in handy. To be honest, this is where it becomes important for coaching, because I'll give you this and you can use it, but it might work with one and not the other because of what you've already wired and how you've wired it into your brain, or how it became wired into your brain. So what I use is the framework I use is, in terms of the reframing, first and foremost, recognize what you want to reframe. What is it that you need to change? Then change the narrative. And I've given you some examples. Instead of saying I always mess things up, just change it to I, you know, I've learned what not to do. I will do this better next time. I will work on this way differently next time. I will use this technique to do this, to prevent this, or however you want it. Or I will find a way to do it, when you're using the I can't narratives a lot. Then as you're doing this, you will find that the old narratives pop up, and this is when you need to just, not without judgment, let them go. It's almost like they come up, you look, you just, it's almost like watching a wave go through. So I call that release. So release it, just let it go, and then reinforce what the narrative is. So in answer to your question, do I write it down and recite? If you're the kind of person that works best with writing, yes, write it down. If you're the kind of person that works best with writing and pasting it somewhere for you to see and keep remembering, then do that. But yes, keep reciting, is the repetition. But most importantly, reciting words is like affirmations that has no basis. It's important that you connect this to your why. That is why in the recognize, we go back to what is it, what is this narrative, why do I want to change it, and there's a lot of other things that go with it. Reinforcing is the reciting and repeating, and then the next part I say is reach and celebrate. Reach is the determination. Keep going till it's actually rewired. Keep going till it becomes comfortable. And you see, because initially it would be it would be almost like a challenge, building up new muscle. That's what you're literally doing. So I hope that helps you, Vijay. um Queen says, so by constantly speaking positive words, we empower our brains to have more or a greater effect on our brains than negative ones. Yes, spot on. And that's a good way to end the comments. Perfect. That is it. Exactly. Statements like, I am building a business that embodies my values. That helps you keep your vision at the forefront and the center of your mind, and will help you navigate help you navigate decisions and give you clarity as well. So hold on to those positives. Keep speaking those positive words, because that is what will empower your brain. So yes, that's it. So we've come to the end. There's one last thing I wanted to paste here, just as I'm going to stop it ticking. See, give me 1 second. Let me just paste it on. Right. So let's see. So brain scan research shows that concentrating and meditating on positive thoughts. This follows on from actually what you've just asked, Queen. Brain scan research shows that concentrating and meditating on positive thoughts, feelings, and outcomes can be more powerful than any drug in the world, especially when it comes to changing old habits. So that's something to just think about. So this is the end of this session today. And thank you, thank you, thank you so much for all the questions, all the comments. Really great. Thank you so much. Thank you. I really appreciated that. So I come on live every first Saturday of the month at the same time, 12 p.m. UK time, 7 a.m. Eastern time. So yeah, come join me, and let's have some more fun. And if you want to know more about the Mindsight Academy, there's a link in the description. Click on it and go check us out. And also, if you want to know more about the Mindsight Women's Network, which is a new membership program for female leaders, female entrepreneurs, where we use scripture, neuroscience, just basically like what I've done today. Check us out as well. It's so powerful. So many wonderful, wonderful ladies there. And you can also book a call to have a conversation or chat with me if you want to know more. So I will end it by saying I look forward to seeing you all next month, and have a fantastic, fantastic rest of your month. And please don't forget to subscribe to this YouTube channel so that other people can also find this video. I really, really appreciate that. And I look forward to seeing you guys next one. Go practice. Pay attention to your spoken words, pay attention to your thoughts, pay attention to your emotions, and win this year. Go start rewiring your brain so that you can truly soar higher. Bye for now.